Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sloppy Lab. This is Bottom of the Beaker, the weekly show about the design, ducks, and strategy of Keyforge, everyone, and I mean everyone's, favorite unique deck game. I am JT Russell, and with me tonight is the man who has run the numbers and determined that he has saved a total of 3,457 amber from free keys with Ectocharge to date. Go figure. I am, of course, talking about Quick Draw 3457. How are we doing tonight, Quick Draw?
I am good. I am not saving as much amber at such a rapid pace that I was a week ago, but still hopefully saving a little bit.
Still hopefully saving a little bit. At least paying not premium, I guess, is what they say. At
Yes.
least paying not premium. Although you're also getting a pip from the Ecto Charge, as it were. So
Mm,
maybe fortunate for six, but getting one for your troubles, too, is still not a bad
positive
deal.
value.
Positive
That's
value.
right.
Cool. Well, fresh from his day of jury duty.
Oh man. Thankfully it was short.
Uh, well, we
I was
thank you for your
in
civic
and
duty,
out.
I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Honestly, the rest of the world was more excited for me to go to jury duty than I was. Um, Everybody's like, "Oh, it's so exciting. Hope you get a good case." And I'm like, "I hope I don't get a case. I want to come
the,
home and get back to work."
the judge was kind of interviewing folks and goes, "Tell me your favorite KeyForge format." Quick Draw looks him in the eye, says adaptive, and judge goes, "Get out of here."
Get out. You are disqualified. He gave us a lot of like very technical legal terms. He was a very good judge. He went over things for an hour, and then I sat there quietly for an hour, and then I was gone. That was it.
Hmm, okay.
Didn't
Okay.
didn't need any jurors today. They send everybody home.
Well, that's a good day of jury duty, I suppose. I'm yet to actually have to actually sit for a trial. So
This
or
was my very first time ever being called. Period.
wow, not bad.
So I made it this far.
Not bad. Yeah, and they looked at your background. Adaptive Dark Tidings. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I wish I could say it was a cool story like that, but they let everyone go.
They let
So.
everyone go. Okay, well, maybe they just didn't want you to feel awkward, you know, singled out.
Yeah, I'm sure that all 60 or 70 people in the room with me are all avid Keyforge players. So
Yeah, and the chat has it right. The chat has it right. It's like sign up to vote. Welcome to jury duty
you're
immediately.
not wrong, Ketzer. The judge actually made a joke about that today. He's like, just so you know, you were chosen randomly. There's not anyone that is out to get you.
Mm-hmm.
They get all of the jurors. They pull from the pool of registered voters and people with a driver's license. And he
Yep.
said, if you don't want to serve on jury duty, get rid of your driver's license and stop voting.
Yep. 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 Well,
And I was like, okay, I'll
there
think
you
about that.
there you have it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Neither happening very soon. I'm sure. But here we are. Here we are, not serving and back at work or back at the lab anyway, and
Yeah.
talking about a fun topic this evening, a spicy topic anyway. Welcome chat, welcome Ketzer, welcome Data Forge stream, welcome Murph. Good times to be had. Yeah, hot on the heels, although maybe a little bit lukewarm on the heels once this recording hits podcatchers, but that's okay. We're timeless, even if the topic is not. We're talking, of course, about Errata, specific or in general, and then also kind of the ectocharge errata specifically. We're touching that too. Um, yeah, that's where we're headed. That's the journey in front of us. Hmm.
Yeah. And you mentioned that we try to be, you know, more evergreen with our content, and we're going to try to do it tonight too. So it's not just going to be talking about Ectocharge. Obviously, we'll start with that, but since a lot of you guys will be listening a week later, want to make sure this still has some little freshness to it, something you can apply to the long term as well. So we'll talk more generally about Errata, its place in Keyforge, other games, what it means, the things like that. So, but yeah, the low hanging fruit I think is to start with Ectocharge, and this came down Friday at 5 Eastern, which
Hmm.
is the time that all of the big news from Ghost Galaxy comes down. It is like right when people in the US are like leaving work and right when everyone in Europe is going to sleep. And then suddenly you can't go to sleep because you're losing sleep over Ectocharge no longer working the way that you thought it did. And so yeah, if I could make one request, I wish that they would release these articles like earlier in the day or
Mm.
maybe not on a Friday.
So here's my theory on this. Okay, and this is a glass half full theory. I believe. Uh, I believe that they set themselves a deadline. They're like, this week we're gonna get out the blast. You know, we're gonna send out these emails, these updates, and they gave themselves that week to get it done. They worked really hard all week, and they're like, it's not quite ready yet, not quite ready yet. They kept working right up until the very last minute, and they were like, now it's ready, and they let it go before they went home.
Okay,
That's
well then my request is to change your deadline, your arbitrary deadline, from the end of the week to the end of Wednesday.
Yeah. You sound like every development team has had this debate at one point during their sprint retrospectives, right? Like they're like, guys, peeps, it's really terrible to like have things spill over from a Friday into the weekend. Let's change our sprints so we sprint like Wednesday to Tuesday, right? Wednesday to Tuesdays instead of Monday to Friday. And every
That's what
team
we
has
do.
this. Do you do that?
Wednesday
Yeah.
to Tuesday. Yeah.
It works well for you? Yeah.
I know, but that's a different problem.
Yeah. It's tricky because then you always have weekends in the middle of your stuff and you never have a weekend when you're like, I don't have to think about developing a thing this
Well,
weekend.
they are 2 week sprints.
They are two
So,
week sprints. Yeah, yeah. But you never have a weekend between the start and the end. It's always a weeknight.
right,
Yeah,
right. But you at least have one full week where that whole week you're focused on
that's
that
true.
sprint.
Very true. Very true. You're not wrong. There are pros and cons. But anyway.
We're not here to talk about bad software development practices.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe we are. I don't know.
Maybe we are. It hits too close to home. I have retrospective Friday this week. So
There you go.
yeah.
All right. So what was your gut reaction last Friday when this came down?
I was not surprised at the content. I'd say if I had a twinge of disappointment, if I was disappointed, it was at the timing. Okay, I felt like this would have been a welcome note a month or two before, or maybe a month or two later, um, with sort of a like, hey, we're cooking on this stuff. Let's see where we land. But it's tough to really I don't know infer too much of kind of what went on behind the scenes without really knowing. So I like to imagine too, again, glass half full, like we're thinking it's fine, and then all of a sudden they're like, nope, the data's coming in. It's really not going to make for a great VT season. We can either let it go and have folks not have a great time, as great a time as they could, or we can make a change. Folks are not going to be happy. But if we bite the bullet now, then maybe they'll have a better experience. And that's tough because folks had made purchasing decisions, right? They've invested time testing decks and what have you, and so that's a bit of a shift for folks to adjust to, and that's tough. So that's tough. So
Mhm.
there are conflicts in my mind, and I'm sure that they were getting bombarded with requests from all sides, kind of the whole time too, and they're trying to make sense of what to do. So that's
Yeah.
what's going on in my head. I don't know. I'm also still on the fence of whether or not it was needed balance wise. I think it was a safe bet. Whether or not it was 100% required, it's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
Hmm.
Where was your head at?
Yeah. I mean, I something that I thought was long needed. I mean, when it came out at KFC, I was like, there's no reason to change this compared to the anomaly. But I did trust them that, in the context of this set, that it would be okay. I enjoyed playing it, getting keys for two, three, sometimes zero. Um, I'm kind of like you, where I was a little on the fence as to whether it was necessary, and I say that as someone who's come on here and ranted about the power level of Archon decks like spiking too much recently, and I'm still like, okay, like I don't think we had enough time to adapt to Ecto Charge or
Mm-hmm.
Winds of Death, for example, and yeah, I mean, I do think it was a good change overall. I'm not mad that they made it. I'm kind of mad at the timing of it all.
Mm.
So, I don't dislike the change. But like we both sound like we're on the same page here. We're kind of like, okay, yeah, that was good, but I'm not really satisfied, kind of
Um,
thing.
I mean, was it good? I guess I'm also not ready to say it was good. I think it was safe. I think it was a safe play. And question from the chat too, like what sort of data do we think they had? I don't know. They certainly had, I'm sure, a lot of folks sending in messages saying, "Hey, this should happen," and probably
Mhm.
looking at that as one data point. Hopefully, not the only data point, but one. Maybe running some more test games and looking at decks that had been registered. I mean, I don't think that they're, certainly not running test games with every deck that the algorithm spits out, but what folks are bringing to the Crucible, or what folks are scanning in and is popping up high rated highly on DOK. Um, are things that they could jam some games with and be like, okay, yeah, this is a little bit too much. Uh,
Tinfoil hat here.
Tinfoil hat here. Okay.
This this came a week after the NKFL deck submission deadline. They wanted to see what percentage of Grim Reminders decks in
uh,
NKFL had Ecto Charge in them.
Interesting.
No, I'm
I
just
don't know.
kidding. That's not a serious suggestion. But it was unfortunate timing for a lot of leagues.
Mhm.
NKFL in particular, the most popular online league that I know of, with 200 players, and it came like right at the end of week one,
Yeah.
and threw a wrench in everything. The Keyforge Team League, which we're both playing in, is in the last week of the regular season, and so it kind of like, how do we handle this now? Like we've played all season with this one way, and then we're kind of at the mercy of TCO when we're going to play another way. And so I know Gigi's job is not to consider online leagues, but it definitely made online leagues complicated. And I stated that I was very happy that I was not running an online league at the time this happened, because this was kind of a mess for the players to sort through.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you. I don't think there's a great way to recover from that in full, right? Like short of short of saying, all right, we're gonna cut the league now, start over, everybody submit a new lineup. There's really not much you can do, and even that feels bad. There's no feel good 100% path for league organizers who are mid league. Um, that's tough. I don't know if there's really much they can do about it. There's kind of always going to be something mid flight. Um, uh, the nearness to the VT season cranking up is a little bit more of a feel baddie for me. But
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of skipped over some of the not housekeeping really, but more of just like setting the table type of stuff that I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to go over before we really like dive deep into the nitty gritty of this situation. And so um, we did want to like kind of give our definition of errata, or how we're thinking of it here in this case, in case maybe not everyone's familiar with it. Your only experience with it is library access and bait and switch, which is fair. But the definition that I came up with, and JT I think mostly agrees with this, is an update made to the rules or text in a game to better reflect the designer's intent or to satisfy the player base's desires. And I think you had a minor quibble with that wording, or does that sound okay to you?
I think that's mostly okay. I can get on board with it, at least for this discussion. I don't think that many folks would consider changes to the rules themselves as errata, though I can absolutely see the like, yeah, technically this works. This works for the definition. Um, and I actually kind of like it the more that I think about it, because I do like to think of Keyforge at large as more of a game system, right? And then when you choose a deck, I choose a deck, and we sit down to play. Like now we're playing a game, and in sort of a game boardy sense, then any change to the rules or the cards at that point are kind of the same ish, right? Like whether I'm changing the
Hmm.
rules or I'm changing the text on a card. I mean, these are all rules that we're agreeing to play by, and we have pieces that operate within those rules. And whether we're talking about text on a card or text in the rule book, I mean, you know, I'm happy calling change on either place errata,
Hmm.
as it were. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think to like have one other kind of preamble here, I have identified four different types of errata that we might see. I think probably specific to Keyforge, maybe in most games. But you could have a clarification errata, which we
Mm-hmm.
saw last week as well with Scoop Up.
Okay.
The function of Scoop Up did not change, but they changed the wording to make it more clear. So there was a clarification. Second one, which I think is a little bit lesser known, is just a templating errata. And the example that I think of for this one is knowledge is power.
Yes.
Knowledge is power, some people may not realize, has a different text in Dark Tidings than it did in previous sets. and it is really just about how the wording is organized on the card. If you remember in DT, there was a lot of the X or Y type cards that had a few bullet points, do this or this. Knowledge is power always had that, but knowledge is power was either gain one or archive a card, and it was
Hmm.
just listed as a sentence form. In DT, they changed it to be the bulleted form. So it was like technically an errata, didn't change any functionality whatsoever, just kind of changed how it read.
So
So that's two.
before you
Yeah.
go on, do you
Mhm.
think, and there's only one right answer here, that they should have changed the name of the card to knowledge or power?
Yes, they should have.
All right. Okay, moving on to the next one then.
Okay. The third one is competitive balance or power tuning, as you put it. And this would be the case with Ecto Charge for sure,
Hmm.
and also most likely the case with original library access and bait and switch as well. But I put a fourth on here because there is a little bit of debate about the library access. And the fourth reason for errata, the different fourth type of errata, as I put it, was play experience. And you could argue, and I wasn't around at the time that the library access um, errata came. I was here, but not like deep into the game. But I did hear a lot of people say that it was actually changed not because it was too powerful, but because it created game states that were virtually impossible to track with like
Hmm.
rule of six for every card in your deck or things like that. And so that is to me is more of like the play experience. And so I put those as the four different types of errata that I could think of.
Hmm. Yeah, those work for me. I actually hadn't considered play experience, and I think mostly because uh, in other games where there have been play experience issues, they've not typically been handled by errata. It's most often been by banning or restricting. Um,
Mm,
so that's one that's kind of interesting to me, and I hadn't considered. But yeah, library access may indeed fall in that camp. May indeed fall into that camp. The card that comes to mind for me, I'm not sure if it ended up getting a restriction or banning at some point in some formats, perhaps from my Magic the Gathering days, is Sensei's Divining Top, which has on the surface a fairly innocuous ability, like, oh, look at your top three, rearrange them, put them back, kind of like a what's that, grunt work, and make a token.
yeah.
Yeah,
Or
so
lay of the land.
or lay of the land, right? Which seems fine. Oh, like I get a little advantage, rearrange some things, get a better draw, what have you. But you combine that with a bunch of like shuffle my deck effects, and all of a sudden you're spending a lot of time on your turns, just rearranging cards, shuffling, rearranging cards, shuffling, and most folks that were calling for action to be taken against this card, it was not because of power level per se, but more because of like, gosh, using this card effectively really drags games out. And I could see, the library access errata falling into kind of a similar camp as that.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. There's some other examples that I had from other games. We'll get to those later, but I definitely have some examples of play experience errata from other games too. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
I will hold that thought.
Okay.
Um, okay, yeah, thanks for bearing with me on that one. So back to Ecto Charge. We're living in a new reality now. Ecto Charge is how it originally was. Um, Minimum of six. How much worse is it? And how much worse do you find in general ecto charge decks are? Because I know like it could differ from deck to deck, but in general.
Uh, in general, I think that those decks lost a lot of punch. The top end of them lost a lot of punch, for sure. I think the top end Ecto Charge decks were effectively playing two key games, race to two keys, where your opponent was more or less playing race to three, right? You're playing race to two, and those are playing a lot fairer key forge now than they were before. And so, yeah, hey, you've got to forge one more key essentially than you were trying to forge before is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So losing one key off the top is quite a power tuning, quite an amount of power tuning. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
that having been said, I don't know if you want to go here right now, but like the flip side of that coin is like I am way more interested in my non-ecto charge decks now than I was before, because almost immediately when I read the announcement, I was like looking at my non key cheat decks in Grim Reminders in New Light and be like, maybe you deserve another look. So like
Mm.
as much as I thought that the top end ones took a hit, it also kind of breathe some life into some of the other ones, which is a nice thing too.
Yeah, I agree that like the Ectocharge decks in general took a major hit with this. This is a massive, massive change.
Hmm.
I went from being able to forge really consistently for a couple amber to, basically just being a little bit better than a key charge. And so it's still not a bad card, but it really changes how good a deck is just by changing this errata. I think this is an extremely impactful errata. Interesting though, like you say that you gravitated towards your non-key cheat decks. Um, all this made me do was think about what other decks I have that can forage for zero. Like I don't have any good key abduction decks this set yet, but I do have a Might Makes Right deck,
Hmm.
and I was like, well, maybe I should go revisit that Might Makes Right deck now because you take away, anytime you have an errata like this for power level, you cut the head off of whatever you know the power curve is, something else is still going to be at the top. And so you get rid of one card that forges for zero, you're going to go look at those other cards that forge for zero as well. And they're still going to be there. And I've seen so many key abduction decks that are immensely worse than Ecto Charge ever could have dreamed to be. And
Mm.
those are still going to be out there. I don't expect an errata to them. I'm not asking for an errata to them, but errata is not like a panacea for like fixing problems
Mm.
because it's not how the power curve works. You're always going to have something on top. And in my collection, about 40 Grim Reminders decks, um, I never had a deck in that pool that was like busted. I had one deck that I might consider at a Vault Tour, but now with this errata, I have nothing that I would consider in my top tier of decks anymore. So for a player like me who doesn't already have a ton of Grim Reminders decks or didn't go on the secondary market and spend big bucks on something, it really just hurts my chances at an Archon level event. And it's fine, like greater good. Maybe this is better for the community in general to not have this, but someone else out there is going to be playing a double Winds of Death, double Key Abduction deck, and I'm not going to have an Ecto Charge to be able to compete with it.
Yeah. Uh, I don't disagree with what you said. I think we did say at one point too that yeah, Ectocharge is the poster child for key cheats in the set. The set on as a whole has very strong key cheat potential, and I think the ceiling for I don't even think this is a controversial thing to say. I think the ceiling for key abduction in the set is much higher than it was for Ectocharge, right? Like you're going to get max one Ectocharge. Okay, maybe you're playing a game to two keys. The very good key abduction decks are looking to OTK you fairly consistently, right? Um,
Hmm.
or if not OTK you, then set up a sequence where you're
Yeah,
now
exactly.
on a two turn clock, let's call it,
Hmm.
while dealing with other threats. Um,
Right. Because like the best key abduction decks will now be able to forge a key with key abduction and then just target to bring it back to their archives and play it next turn. Just hold their hand of 17. And there's not a ton you can do about that. So it does put a clock on it, like you say, even if it's not an OTK.
and there are tools to deal with it, right? So I mean, Dysania is looking really good. You're bringing your own key abductions and letting your opponent play Winds of Death and do your own key abduction is really fun times, right?
Hmm.
You're having good times with mimicry. Mimicry always good. Stock's always on the rise.
Definitely. I
Yeah.
just won a game tonight with the mimicry on opponent's key abduction, even though I had no Mars in my deck.
Hey, there you go.
So,
So yeah, I think there are old tools, and this was kind of harkening back to a previous point. Yeah, I don't think we had a chance to fully explore our replies to the challenges that Grim Reminders presented pre errata, which is not to say that it was a bad thing, a bad call, or would have been proven will be proven incorrect given more time. But I don't think we kind of fully explored the options there. Yeah.
so do you think now that this errata's come down, actually, let me before I ask this question, Data Forge Stream, I think in the chat asked like what types of data do we think GG used for this?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was almost entirely uh, player feedback on their website, and I think there was that I believe I don't know this with any inside information whatsoever, but I believe they had a ton of feedback through the website saying please errata ectocharge, please change ectocharge, please go back to how it was. And I do not think they were inundated with people being like, yeah, I think it's probably okay as it is. Maybe you shouldn't change it, like you and I kind of are. Um, so they're going to do what they hear, and what they hear is, you know, hey, you need to make a change to this. This is terrible. I think that's like the main data point they had. Now, I bring that up because I want to know, is this a slippery slope for GG? Like, now that this is gone, we still have a vocal minority of players clamoring for Winds of Death to be nerfed. And so, is this contingent of players that messaged Ghost Galaxy about Exocharge now going to focus their attention on Winds of Death? And are we going to see a Winds of Death errata in 3 months?
Hmm. Uh, it's a good question. I think we're at the point now where I feel like we can ride out a few high level events and see what actually bubbles to the top. So if I guess I'll say as I'm gonna reserve kind of final say until we've got some actual data under our belt. I don't know that I would say we're on a slippery slope yet. I think that we are looking at a slippery slope and saying, yeah, maybe let's not walk over there. It looks kind of slippery, folks. But I don't think we're
That's a good
actually
point.
on the slope. And to their credit too, to be fair, like I think this is a very important Voltor season that we're about to embark on. Right, we're trying to re-engage folks, fully. We're trying to show stores that have agreed to run these events that, hey, this is a great game. Let's run some events. People are gonna have a great time. And if folks show up and grumble about getting key charge walk-offs left and or key ecto charge walk-offs left and right, like that's not a good look for them. And I think that's kind of weighing on the decision too. So timing's kind of a factor. Is it a slippery slope? I mean, we are in the immediate wake of the change. It's been an awful long time. I think since we've had a power level errata, though, you know, first one in Gigi's reign. Um, so we'll see. I'm not ready yet to say that we're on a slippery slope, but I feel like there's one in the horizon that we will like want to navigate around away from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good point because you have to acknowledge that there is a slippery slope in front of you in order to avoid the slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
If if we are not like very acutely aware of the implications of making another change, it's going to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's just going to snowball from there because at what point, like we talked about this with the alliance talk, like your alliance restricted list, like okay, like whatever you restrict, something else is going to be the most powerful or the most oppressive aspect of a format. I've strongly felt for a long time that restrictions in Keyforge are a bad thing because the game itself was designed to be balanced and policed by itself. And if you're adding arbitrary restrictions to something like a restricted list or a ban list, or maybe even in this case an errata, where like, okay, we're gonna like take this errata down, you're adding these restrictions, something else is always going to be there. And if you set that precedent saying, okay, like whatever is the most powerful thing is subject to an errata, then I'm worried that more will come. Um, it was interesting that like FFG never errataed anything except for the library access bait and switch from the first set, and they did a pretty good job after that to not have to errata anything from the next 4 sets.
Yeah. So a couple things I want to address there. I forget what the first one was, so I'm going to circle back to that. Not needing to do any power level erratas. Yes, I think by general consensus, Winds of Dark Tidings AOA were a little bit lower power level wise. As much as we love the sets, my favorite two sets, no shade to them, but I don't think anyone would have suggested that they need power level errata. If we saw something, it probably would have been in Worlds Collide, but I
Mm,
don't know specifically what she would have targeted. Like I think folks at the time were probably complaining most about tribute Six Semper things,
mm. I was
and
gonna say
then
Ludo.
maybe Ludo. I mean, and then Mass Mutation. I think Mass Mutation had more of a kind of general raising of the floor than like, hey, this one thing is problematic, right? So I don't think that's
Mhm.
like let's go in with a scalpel and lower the power level. It's more of a like, no, everything just got a little bit better, and we're kind of playing with like uh, more energetic particles. I don't know what the right metaphor is. So it's tough. So, but that reminds me of my other point was, I think the like, hey, there's always going to be the next strongest thing is fair modulo mistakes. Modulo is just like, oh, this one card we just missed on, and it's just like way better than everything else around it, right? Like, uh, I don't even know what a great example of that would be, but apparently the powers that were at the time considered bait and switch and library access kind of in those camps. Maybe the rest of the set was roughly around the same band, but these two were far outliers that needed to be reined in. And I don't think everybody would say that now, but that was the feeling at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, like I think the library access was a play experience thing, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've spoken to more than maybe two people who have ever believed that the bait and switch errata was necessary.
Well, I don't know about the bait and switch errata. I think she would say that was not necessary. But she was definitely bitten by the lands errata, the lands nerf.
Who
mm.
was not tonight, or
Got wrecked as it were. Yeah,
mm,
indeed. But we don't need to go down that road.
I don't know that story, so yeah, let's save that one for sloppy lab work after hours.
Yes, indeed. Cool. Uh, yeah, yeah. So we'll see. I think if I were to put on my wishing hat, I have lots of hats. If I were to put on my wishing hat, I would say the way I'd love to see this sort of thing handled is like maybe you have set times. I think Magic did this at one point. I don't know if they still do, but yeah, like yeah, every X months there will be a the potential for an update. It's on the same date, year over year, every 6 months, whatever. And if there's going to be a change, it's going to happen then. And that at least gives you time to plan around, right? So you decide if you're going to make a deck purchase when the date rolls around. You're like, okay, I have a clear window through the next 4 vault
Mm,
tours, right? If there's going to be a change,
yeah,
it's not going to happen until after that window. I can kind of feel confident, and then okay, there'll be the odd emergency um, change, but as a general rule, we'll stick to those ones. And then you can also kind of signal without you know, you can kind of signal that hey, we're considering these things in various ways too, and just to kind of give folks a heads up. But I don't think it makes ever sense to say like, and we talked about this before. I don't think it ever makes sense to say like we are going to errata ecto charge in 6 months, right? Like, so I don't think they
yeah.
could have said however many days ago, like, yeah, at the end of the season, ecto charge goes back to the capped version because nobody really wants um, to play with a
A
deck.
zombie card,
A zombie,
basically.
yeah, a zombie card, right? You kind of don't want to be like, yeah, I'm learning this thing. I'm gonna jam some games with it, but it's not how it's gonna actually behave. It doesn't. That feels weird.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know what you mean. I like that idea that MTG uses of like twice a year or every 6 months on a specific date, everyone knows this is the errata date. And if it comes down this date, okay. If it doesn't, you have 6 months. I think that's a great system. I was going to ask you how other games use errata, if you have any other examples. I have a few that I could share too, but I think it's interesting to look at how other games handle this as well. Like maybe even using it as a design tool, as a development tool. Keyforge may be able to learn from what other games do as well.
I was racking my brain for this. My most of my experience comes from MTG, and the big difference, right, between MTG, or one of the big differences between MTG and Keyforge, of course, is that you can build your decks you can buy cards and build decks versus having to play the deck that you got in the box, which is a difference that I love and embrace about Keyforge, right? But it also means that one of the tools for fixing things in post that MTG has, which is like banning a card, is very difficult to implement well in like a Keyforge setting, right? So if they came down and said, "Hey, Ecto Charge is just banned. You can't bring a Ecto Charge deck," it'd be like, "Oh, wait a minute. That sounds really funky. I can't control whether or not I open up a deck that has Ecto Charge in it." So I
Mhm.
mean, Errata is really the only tool that they have for tuning and post. So I think it's more appropriate on the Keyforge side than on the MTG side for power level reasons, or at least that's where I've seen it much less used. I can really only think I have like one or two cards from MTG's history. Time Vault's the big one that comes to mind, which was printed in Alpha, and yeah, lets you do silly things, and it's changed many, many, many times, but often in response to rules changes and other quirks and interactions that you could take advantage of thanks to those rules changes. But as a general rule, I tend to see other games that I've played, primarily MTG, using more like banning and restricting to enhance to combat play experience or competitive balance things. Lots of templating. Oubliette comes to mind as a card from the MTG world, which was for a long time could not be printed because the text on the card that was necessary took up too much space to actually fit on the card. Like, even if you just like, yeah, this the whole card's going to be a text box, like, you couldn't do it. Like, that's how much text it needed to be printed accurately. So no
Wow.
shortage there. And yeah, clarification, sure, lots over the place. Um, uh, and I appreciate those things coming up just to kind of, yeah, this is not a functional change. We're just going to make sure everybody knows what Scoop Up is doing. Like, awesome. Do
Yeah.
those all day. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Those are fine. I have two other games that I think of with this. One is no surprise to our avid listeners, Star Wars CCG, game I used to be on the design team for, and they are now. It is a print and play game now, so it is you know, uh, it's run by a players committee, a group of volunteers, and all of the cards are just print and play. You print out a piece of paper, you put it over top of an old actual card, and you play with the slips there. So because of that, everyone always has access to like printing the latest text of a card. You don't have this issue where everyone spent all their money on ectocharge decks and no one's ever going to have the right ectocharge text on their grim reminders decks. That's
Mm-hmm.
somewhat of a problem. In Star Wars CCG it is not, and so they are actually very aggressive with the number of times they will errata things for
Mm-hmm.
balance purposes almost exclusively. And kind of like related to your oubliette point, like sometimes they do have to issue errata for clarification or for like better wording, and it puts it over the text limit. And so then there's like a conundrum with like, okay, like how do we handle this? Um, and they're usually like pretty strict on not going over the text limit. Sometimes the rules team is like, well, we kind of have to do this, but um, they actually use it really as a design tool in that game, which I don't personally love. I think it creates a lot of confusion for players, having to constantly like be aware of cards that have changed. I play that game very casually now, and I play a couple times a year with friends. And every time we meet, cards that I know did something 5 years ago almost always do something different now, which is a little bit frustrating for players that aren't like fully diehard. So I hope we don't go in that direction. We're not anywhere near there. We're not going to be like that. But I hope that's not something that they look at and be like, maybe we should use this more aggressively. Hope not. The other game that came to mind for me, and I know there are some Keyforge players that play this one as well, is Root. It's a board game,
Mm-hmm.
not a card game. Um, I got the base game for Root in, I think it was the first, maybe second edition printing, but it was before any errata was issued. And for me and my friends playing casually, it was fine. We were learning the game. It was fun. We all really liked it. And then I hear about these errata that had come out, and I looked them up, and they had like these very convenient like packages you could get for like a couple bucks or whatever the price of shipping was, and they would send them to you as stickers. And everyone has like their own mini game board, and you would just put the stickers on the board to replace what was there before. As a casual player, I saw these errata and I was like, I don't understand why this was necessary. Like the way that we played the game more casually, we never encountered any issues whatsoever with this. But they are issued for like the competitive players, and I think that is a focus of errata most of the time is for like the diehard players, right? And the people that are trying to squeeze out every little advantage they can get from it. But it was interesting to me, like that was my first experience with errata and board games, as opposed to card games, and they had a system where you could at least like be playing with a board that is correct and that shows you the right rules, the right wording, the right you know everything going on with it. Um, and so I thought that was another interesting approach to it that was different than what I was used to.
Mm. I don't know why, but as you're telling this about Root, my brain went to Munchkin. Do you play any Munchkin Quick Draw?
I've never played Munchkin, no.
Well, one of the game's charms, and this might actually be true. It might just be how I learned to play the game. Is that the rules are kind of not super well defined, you know? And part of the game is like, yeah, this is how it works. You know, we do this and this and this, and and there's a very big social component, and like rules lawyering is kind of embraced as a thing that you do, but the rules aren't super well defined, so it's kind of tongue in cheek, and it's kind of like a what you can get away with, you kind of go for. Uh, but I don't know.
Is it intentionally like that, or is it like
I
is
I
it,
think so. If it's not, then it's just how the play group that the play group that I have played with went with it, and that's what we did.
I could see that being like kind of a cool feature of a game where it's like, are you looking for the rules? You want to know how to play? Figure it out on your own. That's part of the game.
There's a loose structure that's very clear, and then the specifics, you know, yeah,
Yeah,
you make it,
I
figure
respect
it out.
that.
Respect that.
I think it's kind of cool. Stay sloppy, right?
Stay sloppy. Yes. Not all the chat agrees, but hey, what can you do?
Munchkin's awful. I said his data for stream. All right, I'm gonna give it a shot now. I don't know. It sounds interesting.
I tried to convince Not Tonight to play it, explained to her the premise, and she was like, "That just sounds terrible." So naturally, I sent her a copy.
And now you guys play by post every day.
We oh, that would be a wonderful play by post game.
Really?
Not even a little bit.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's too bad.
yeah.
All right, bring it to the next vault tour that we're at, maybe in
Okay.
Rochester.
All right, there you go. Bring it
Give
to
it a shot.
Rochester. Yep.
A side note, I feel like I was at KFC and I was at one vault tour last year. One thing that I felt was different than my expectations is that there weren't really many board game players. Like people didn't bring other board games to play and hang out with like late at night.
Hmm.
That was something that I kind of like looked forward to is like hanging out with people all weekend and like late night board game affairs when people were like, we're gonna take a break from Keyforge for a few hours and just play like I don't know Avalon or something until like the middle of the night. And maybe we can just play Munchkin all night at the
Well,
next Vault Tour.
we should play something. Maybe this will be a nice benefit of having the event located at a game store, local game store. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
want to keep somebody up into all hours, but maybe there's a place where they can be like, yeah, go over here to play for till you want to stop playing, whatever you want to play. But we'll take this on, see if we can get some folks, or everybody's gonna have an Airbnb close by. We'll see. Yeah,
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 one or the other.
one or the other.
Okay, sidebar over.
Sidebar over.
Back to errata. Um, you had a few questions here that you wanted to touch on. Um, what leads to necessitating errata of the different forms? One of the forms that we defined earlier. Is there anything that like how do you want to attack
Yeah,
this?
I've been wrestling with this, and I think it's an idea that we've brought up a couple episodes now, um, and it's this idea that I want the designers to be able to make like bold choices and experiment and like do a thing and be like, yeah, I don't know, maybe it's too strong, and you try it and you see what everybody does, and you know what the fact is, if they play it safe every time on the design end, it's going to be a boring game, right? It's going to be a boring game, and our collective ability to test and to iterate and to find like mine for the best decks is always going to outstrip their ability to find the issues up front. There are going to be mistakes that slip through. It's just going to happen if you're trying to make things exciting. If you're trying to like, you want to be able to print a card and have folks go like, "Ooh, that's exciting. Is it too good? It might be too good," and they're like, "We're pretty sure it's not too good," but you're all going to find out and make a definitive answer much more effectively than we will. Like, I think that is a healthy state for the game to be in. It's like gives you great sales hooks. It gives your players something to talk about, to sink their teeth into, to test on. And every once in a while, it's going to actually be a little bit too strong, and you need something to fall
Mhm.
back on to correct it in post, right? I think there are tools that you can take on to address those things when they happen, right? I think set rotation is one, If it's just a
Hmm.
little bit too strong, you can say, well, it's borderline. It'll work its way out. We don't want to take like excessive corrective action because there is a cost to doing errata too often, right? To errataing things too often. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, this one's not great, but it'll be okay for a couple seasons or whatever, right? So that's a thing that can help, but it's not a silver bullet. It can help to mitigate. And then errata is the other one because you don't have banning as an option per se. So to correct things in post, you've really got to say, nope, this card just behaves differently now because we can't go and take it out of your deck. So we got to
Hmm.
leave it in your deck. The only thing we can do is have it behave a little bit differently. So that's kind of the lever that they've got. Um,
Hmm.
so I expect it to happen from time to time. So we've had what, two or three over a handful of years, with a gap of printing in there. That may be a little bit high. That may be a little bit high, but I feel like it shouldn't be a thing that, if it happens once every 3-ish years, that you're like, oh my gosh, like this is not good. I think it's kind of a sign of some healthy experimentation, um, though it doesn't feel good when it happens. And I think that the
Yeah.
best you can do is to like have some boundaries and expectation setting around when it might happen. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't help but have to differentiate the FFG era and the Ghost Galaxy era because we have seen a lot more power creep in these two sets, which indicates that we're probably more likely to see more errata in these two sets. And so, yeah, like Keyforge only had one set of or two errata in the FFG era in the first five sets. Or is it six? I don't know. I can't count. One, two,
Mm-hmm.
three, four, five sets. Um, and that's good. That's very good, especially since they came in the first set and you know didn't have any issues after that. I'm a little more nervous, being that we're just two sets into Ghost Galaxy. We're seeing power creep and we're already seeing an errata. But something else you said kind of like resonated with me, which was that you have to take risks in your design, and it reminded me of one of Mark Rosewater's blogs about bad cards.
Mm.
And one of the things that he talks about in Magic the Gathering with designing bad cards is that you need these bad cards in a set because every so often someone finds a really interesting use for a bad card and they find a really creative way to exploit it. Maybe not like exploit in a bad way, but just like, milk some advantage out of that. And so one of the purposes that they make bad cards, like one of the purposes of making them is you need to make players, or at least certain types of players, look at a card and be like, is this card just bad? Or does this card have something more underneath it that I need to discover?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't always just look at a card on the surface and know that. You have to really like think about it, see what other combos exist, see what else you can get out of it. And so I think it's kind of similar to that, where like, yeah, you want them taking risks. You want to keep the game interesting. You want to allow players some level of discovery, and you also can't possibly expect a limited amount of designers and playtesters to find something that like hundreds of or maybe thousands of players playing this game constantly like we do, um, like are going to be able to find. Because if your process is such that you can guarantee that a set of like 25 or 30 playtesters and four designers and developers can find every potential negative interaction, it is not deep enough of a game. It is
Mm-hmm.
not exciting enough of a design. And so I totally hear you in that. Like you have to take risks. You have to do some things that you may not be comfortable with, um, and kind of see where the players take it and see if the players can take it beyond what you were intending to, or maybe they can't, and maybe they had a fun time trying. I don't know.
Yeah, and yeah, some good comments in the chat too. It's tough, and I think we also have to put a little context around, kind of FFG era and GG era, right? Like when GG was printing new set, or when FFG, excuse me, was printing new sets, the game was fresh. It was new. It was kind of on this booming upward trajectory. Maybe I'm like looking back with with rose-colored glasses, but it's like, yeah, it's the new hip game. People are really excited about it. Kodo just came out. AOA came out. It was maybe a little bit weaker, but folks are still excited, and you can take kind of you can take kind of a downward dip on the power level, and folks are going to be like, hey, what's going on here? You know, I think if GG had printed a set that was weaker than Mass Mutation, we would be hearing a lot of different complaints, and folks would be much less interested than with a Power Crept set. Now, that's not to say that, it had to go so far necessarily, or where the balance is, but I think that if you're gonna miss, yeah, you want to miss high a little bit for these ones, and it's kind of a tough balance to strike. I think that the stakes for missing low are a lot higher now than they were when say AOA or Worlds Collide was being released.
Mm, yeah. I mean, I think also the ectocharge part, it doesn't really feel like they were taking a risk. I mean, they
Mm,
certainly were, but like this card was already printed in in the anomaly form in Winds of Exchange, and I mean, it wasn't. No one thought it was bad. It's just that not very many people had their hands on it. It was an ultra rare, basically, and so when they made the decision to completely take out the minimum for it, that was kind of an odd choice to power creep it. I felt that doesn't really fall into the category of like design risks to me. Like when I look at
mm,
design risks, I'm thinking like we're not quite sure how players are going to play this, but let's let them figure it out. This is one where you could play a few games, and pretty much everybody that played Ecto Charge for like 3 games was able to forge a key for like three or less with
yeah.
it. So it didn't. It's not really a design risk in that you're like unsure of the boundaries that can be breached with this. Like it was pretty obvious, and so obvious that like it was printed in like the minimum six. Before then, it was just a curious card to change.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. Is an odd change too. It almost felt like, oops, we forgot to include the parenthetical, like we were reprinting this card and the parentheses got dropped, sort of a thing. Um, I don't know. Uh, yeah, yeah. I'm not sure what I think was exactly would be awesome to be the fly on the wall for that discussion. Maybe, gosh, I don't know. Maybe their feedback inbox was flooded with folks saying like we really need something to unseat woe, and well, maybe if we push
Hmm.
push GR a little bit extra, and they're looking for knobs that they can pull on to push GR a little bit extra, and like, you know what, maybe this ectocharge thing is one knob that we can pull on. Yeah, I
Could
don't know.
be.
I don't
I
know.
don't know either.
But
But I encourage them to continue taking risks. I mean, that's how the game's going to stay fun. Is you can't control everything. You got to let the players discover some things. So I'm perfectly fine with taking risks, but there's also other cases where it just feels unnecessary. Sandworm is one where it's like, did it really need 2 pips? Like, we thought it was bad with 0, but like, it would have been a cool card with 1.
see, Sandworm I actually like. I think that the risks, well, it's very splashy to take risks when it's on kind of like new vectors for the game, right? Like when you are putting out a new set and you're like, hey, there's this new mechanic. It lets you interact with the resources of the game in a different way. And look at this very splashy card. It's probably very good. And it's hard for us to gauge how good it is because, yeah, you're interacting with the resources of the game in a different way, like cards in graveyard or, the turns right before a deck flip and how you manage those. Sandworm feels like a very splashy card that you can put on a playmat, for example, and but still have like a really good grounding and like understanding for what its impact is going to be versus something like Ectocharge where you might not have a ton of I mean, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, you do a few playtest games with some of the stronger decks and you're like, this feels very consistent, but categorically the spicier cards that you're printing that are kind of leaning on some of these new ways of interacting with the game's resources are a little bit harder to wield kind of precisely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think when I'm looking at risks, I'm thinking on this more now. Numbers to me seem like one of the easiest things to control and to balance. Like the 2 pips on the sandworm,
Hmm.
the minimum 0 or minimum 6 on ectocharge, the 30 power for a thing from the deep. Like these are things that don't stick out to me as like the kind of risks that I like.
Mm.
When I talk about risks, I want risks to be like create an interaction where you're not sure how it's going to be used, like Sandhopper, right? Like,
Yeah.
how can you creatively use Sandhopper to do this unique thing? And I think there's lots of good there. But if you're just like, let's put an extra pip on there, like let's increase the number of pips we have, let's increase the power of this card, let's make the key cheaper. Like those numerical things, to me, aren't as interesting. They are very easy to adjust the power level that way, but it does not really increase the, the ceiling, in my opinion, of like player skill.
So I agree with you, but I think that's because we have very similar, like we approach the game very similarly. I think there are absolutely players out there who are going to look at the 30 power creature or the 16 power creature and be like, that's awesome. Give me some more of that. I'm going
Oh,
to,
it's cool. It's for sure it's cool.
yeah.
I beg to differ that we play this game similarly. You have a lot of very, very negative play experience decks that I cannot stand. So I take exception to you categorizing us as one and the same here. We happen to be on the same page, I think, with this though.
Yeah, I should rephrase that. I really enjoy playing this game with people like you who can't stand my decks.
uh, I guess I breathe life into this team one way or another.
you know, is breathing? It's more like a feeding on your blood sort of a thing, of
Yeah,
vampirism.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And I keep coming back for more. What
yeah,
am I doing?
absolutely. More wacky experimental upgrades, Ketzer. Yes, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Ketzer, I'm gonna throw you under the bus, Quick Draw. Ketzer, I really want to do a Voltron episode, and I can't convince Quick Draw to do it. So maybe we can work on him or something. But
I am very willing to be convinced.
yes, yeah, I've not done a great job doing the convincing. So we need some more ideas on the Voltron front. But I think it'd be cool. But yeah, more wacky experimental upgrades. Like that's a cool place to push into for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. And I think one of the reasons why Sandhopper doesn't excite you in that way is like it's a it's tweaking levers of the game that you have a very like strong intuition, strong grounding in, like good appreciation of, and also like I don't know, Magic has the Magic designers and folks have talked about the player psychographics an awful lot, and there is a particular psychographic that would get super excited about Sandworm, and there are others that are just like meh, you know. And I think we just happen to not be in the super excited camp for that one, though I'll take those pips all day long.
I for some reason can't open them, but um, I do have a thing from the deep, and I feel like thing from the deep would still be an extremely cool card if it was a 20 power instead of a 30.
Oh,
So like,
sure, sure.
why
But
did it need to be 30?
because you
Like,
waste not those draws, my guy.
how many people have a waste not thing from the deep? That's what I want right there.
There you go. I do not. I do not.
Mm.
I do not. Yeah. Yeah. Well.
Okay, so back to the original topic. There's another topic here I think we want to like kind of go over at least briefly.
Hmm.
Weighing kind of like the pros and cons of issuing errata and having these communities like having to track this stuff, especially in this case where like no one has an ecto charge from Grim Reminders printed with the actual text. So tracking that kind of thing can be difficult for players who aren't always following all the rules online. So like what are the effects of excessive post corrections or errata on games and communities versus the effects of just ignoring them and letting those balance issues like run wild in the game. Like
Hmm.
there's there, there's pros and cons to both. How do you feel about those? Like, is there something that sticks out to you as far as like one you like
Yeah.
better?
Uh, uh, done to excess. The post corrections, erratas, what have you, rules changes. I think can really undermine your secondary market, your kind of community enthusiasm. So done too often, I think it can be a bit of a foot gun, right? Like you're doing this thing to make the experience better, but it creates a feeling of unsettlement done too often. And I think kind of the best way to manage that is to set up boundaries and expectations around when these things can happen, kind of like we talked about. Um, and I really don't envy being in the position of looking at these big events, your big flagship events coming forward and wondering whether or not you're going to be better off rolling out a change versus running through the events and letting folks carry forward with the decks they have in hand or the cards they have in hand. Um, so I think I have to take a little bit of a cop out and say like you've kind of got to do a little bit of both, but the best way through that is to make sure that you're setting up expectations and then meeting them as much as possible, as opposed to not, and I don't think you're going to get away from all post corrections. I think it's kind of an inevitability, and even to an extent a sign of healthy design. Yeah, or can be a sign
Hmm.
of healthy design. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree, and I mentioned the Star Wars CCG earlier, how they use it now since they have print and play. It's much easier to track in that regard. But for someone like me who used to be a diehard of that game, it's very difficult for me to track it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I certainly don't want us to approach anything close to that range
Yeah.
where, like almost every deck you open has a card that does something different than it says. That would be a very bad experience for a lot of people and
Totally.
really stunt the
Totally.
game's growth.
And one of the things has that drew me initially to Keyforge, that still draws me to Keyforge, is that like, and this goes hand in hand with kind of the like no deck building. Like, all right, I'm good with that. I don't want to be interacting with the game on my not playing time in a deck building way. And I think that lots of errata, like you're describing, in that scenario, is very similar. Like you have a constant, like your what your deck is, how it functions is constantly shifting, and so you're kind of always like reevaluating, re-looking back, and like sure, there's to an extent that happens as you're considering how this same deck fits into a shifting meta, but how it behaves is not changing, and so that's kind of a quantity that you can kind of mentally bank, and I think that's super valuable. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, cool. We covered a lot of ground there. Well, I'm sure we'll change a lot of it in in editing or auditing the episode, as it were. Yeah,
Give us a few months and we'll stealth the rot of this one.
I will stealth her out of this one. Um, I don't know. Anything else that you want to hit, or maybe we'll play a game.
Um, just a funny story from again Star Wars CCG. When you and I were talking beforehand about the different types of errata. This is a story I think's funny enough to share. The play experience one is one that like we didn't really think of right off the bat. We're thinking of reasons for this. Um, but back in '98, I think it was when Star Wars CCG was like at its most popular. They had the World Championship event, and somebody came up with a deck that could infinitely take actions every single turn, or rather, like in the first turn of the game, and just constantly do legal actions, cycle through their deck, put things back from their hand into their deck, and that this game is you win the game by having more cards left in your life force, as it's called, like your deck, than your opponent. At the end of the game, whether you deplete theirs entirely or time runs out, whoever has more wins. And so this person came up with a deck that would just constantly spend 60 minutes shuffling their deck and cycling their hand, fully legal actions, and just do that for 1 hour straight on the very first turn of the game and win every single game just doing that. And yeah, it was a negative play experience. It wasn't completely unbeatable, but if you didn't know that they were going to do it, you couldn't do anything about it. And that to me is a perfect example of the play experience errata, where they immediately fixed that after the World Championship, and you can never do it again. And so it's not that that deck was like too powerful, but it was ridiculous, and people are gonna find competitive ways to win, and I don't fault that person at all. But I think it certainly was a black eye for the game to have that happen at your World Championship.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just a funny story that I thought I'd share about
Yeah.
Errata.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know MTG has, or at least had, yeah, I can't really speak in present tense for a lot of this, but in like your tournament guidelines and rules, it was considered slow play even if you were taking actions quickly but not advancing the game state. So if you spent 20 minutes and had performed efficiently performed legal actions during that time, but had not advanced the game state, that would still be considered slow play. Um, but
Hmm.
if you're like gaining one nugget every 5 minutes or something, then I don't know. What can you say?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
I'm creating an advantage. I am playing to win the game. You just don't like how I'm winning it. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, appreciate the story. I have a note from our sponsor here for this evening. This episode of Bottom of the Beaker was sponsored by the Circle Speakeasy. Step into a realm of enchantment at the Circle Speakeasy, where every drink is charged with mystery and wonder. Unwind amidst the flickering glow of amber lights and savor signature concoctions like the Forge Master's Fizz and Archon's Ambrosia. With an ambiance as captivating as a sanctum stronghold and libations as diverse as the crucible itself, the Circle Speakeasy may be hard to find, but it's even harder to forget. Yes, indeed. Uh, yeah. See you down at the Circle Speakeasy, Quick Draw.
Do they serve do they serve Grans Brew there?
They absolutely serve Gronsbury there, but you have to know how to ask
Excellent.
for it. Yeah, that's the thing.
All right. Well, we can't share that in
No,
public like
no,
this.
it'll be for the
It's a circle speakeasy after all.
bottom of the beaker after dark. Yes.
One of these
Uh,
days, I think an After Dark episode might be good.
it might be good. It's certainly after dark here. Our last late recording, we were both very tired for. Although we got good
Yeah.
feedback, so I don't know.
Oh, and the one that I messed up with the live show last week, or a different one?
uh, uh, different one.
Oh, okay. You said we got good feedback on the last time we did something. I thought you were referring to last week's
There was
episode.
one where we were like we recorded later than normal, and people were like, "Oh, you guys were good." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well. Yeah.
You know, not usually good, but that time.
Hey,
All
guess
right.
we thrive without sleep.
That's the way of it. Folks, I want to let you all know that Bottom of the Beaker is recorded live Wednesday evenings at 9:30 Eastern right here at twitch.tv/sloppylabwork. You can find recordings of our past shows and other streams over at youtube.com. We are at Sloppy Labwork over there for the very best content. 34? No, 57 times distilled and scraped from the bottom of the beaker. You can search for that very phrase in your podcatcher of choice, and we'll be there. Scratch that. We're there to jam with you. Uh, yeah. All that and more at sloppylabwork.com. Quick Draw, got any words for the folks getting off at the final audio stop?
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hope you learned something about errata, but if not, stay sloppy anyway.
Stay sloppy indeed. And yeah, thanks to the chat peeps hanging out. Good times. We'll play a game now that the children have gone to bed. How about, did you have a deck in mind? Are we going to play decks with rotted cards in them?
I was thinking we could play an Ecto Charge versus a lands deck. I thought that would be funny.
Hilarious. I
Um,
I'm on board for whatever. I was also thinking, I don't know how you feel about this, but we could start making whatever we play also adaptive best of one semi regularly too, if we happen to.
I feel like I cannot accept that because that would just me be accepting that I suck on this show and that I need help to win. And frankly, I don't think that would help. I don't
Okay,
think that's the problem.
not the problem. All right, well, do you want to be? I like the lands ecto charge showdown. Do you want to be on the land
Um,
side or the ecto charge side? Oh, wait, are we playing pre-errata version of these? No.
no, I don't think we can do that.
Okay.
That's just too much. Um, I kind of want to play on the land side because I just acquired a new lands deck that I've been really having fun with. And what better way to get my first loss than against you live on stream?
All right, let's do it. I will play an ecto charge deck, but I'm probably going to forge all of my keys with Chota.
Excellent.
let's have some good old fashioned Keyforge here.
Good old fashioned,
Give the people what they want.
which is which is in library access.
Yeah, I I've been thinking. I don't know, kicking around the idea of having like a Keyforge webcomic. Something in the vein of like
Ooh,
Oatmeal or XKCD. Very low production value. Not that they're low production value, but like an artistic style that I can handle.
you
And
should totally do that. One of my old friends made one for Star Wars CCG, and it's classic. It's over 20 years old now, and people still remember it. They still. I emailed him about it last year. I was like, hey, like I can't find the links to your old comics. Do you have them? And he was like, oh my god, I can't believe people still care about that. And he like has them all saved, and I got to revisit, read all of them again. You should totally do a Keyforge comic. That would be timeless.
I may need some help with collabs. I have exactly one good idea. Actually, for one of my engineering teams, way in the past, I had like a weekly engineering comic that I sent out to everybody, which was always for good for a laugh. But my Keyforge idea is like, box one, everybody's grumbling about Ectocharge, Winds of Death, and they're like, can't we just go back to Keyforge the way it was intended to be played or whatever? And then like the last frame is like, and then I take my archives like Dust Pixie, Hunting Witch, Dust Pixie, Chota, Nature's Call, Dust Pixie, like, oh, that
And
was
you've
that was
just
good.
ruined the punchline of the one and only idea you had.
Oh well, we'll cut it out of the audio, but it was too good not to
Yeah.
share, and gonna need some. I'm gonna need enough like thinking time so that you'll all forget. You'll all forget by the time I do it.
Yeah. No, you should totally do that. I have zero I have nothing to add to or contribute to that project, but you should totally do it.
It sounds like Ketzer and the folks in the chat are asking, so maybe we'll make it happen. Uh,
Yes, do it, Ketzer.
I
JT will
will
give you the ideas.
I will absolutely host it. We will absolutely host it. I
Oh
have
yeah.
an idea and no talent.
Welcome
Yeah,
to my life.
an idea and no. Oh, quick draw with the game ready in beginner as we do.
Of
Uh,
course.
and I am gonna play Tritrix, Blom Tritrix, um, which is an Ectocharge deck that's in my NKFL lineup. It is also the deck that I opened at our store champs, um, and is very, very saucy. Uh,
Excellent.
Boo, Double Holiday Festival, uh, Cursed Tomb, in here somewhere, right? We talked about this in the Cursed Tomb episode too. Double Mamet, so decent amount of recursion in Geistoid, and also features a Witching Hour and Witch Queen double rare combo for some shenanigans. One of those witches being Chota, and
Very nice.
yeah, we'll see. And you were playing the weird.
Um,
You were just looking for an excuse to play Weird Beard. You
I
set this all up to
yeah,
play Weird Beard.
maybe I did. Yeah, Mrs. Weird Beard Blued. Um, got this one off of a friend probably about a month ago. It's been great. I don't have a ton of good Coda decks. This one feels like a lot of fun, pretty unassuming. But it's a library access, triple phase shift, reverse time, Nepenthe Seed. So it's been fun. It's been really good for me. It's won against a variety of um, different sets. So I'm really into it right now.
I am impressed, Quick Draw. I'm not even mad. I'm just impressed that you orchestrated this whole thing so that you could get a test game of Weird Beard versus Grim Reminders.
What did you think I was gonna do?
I don't know, but I dig it. Oh, Mother out of the bat, nice.
It's pretty good.
All right, well, not a very impressive opener for me,
That's what I like to
but
hear.
debating how I want to play this. If this were last week, 2 weeks ago, if this were 2 weeks ago, I would play this Cursed Tomb. Um, but I think now it's a discard. I will, though, play this Harvest Skimmer and archive the Cursed Tomb, which I may regret, but we'll see.
Okay. Right. Um, let's go to Untamed here. Um, get you no value out of that Mamet. Repent Seed, Grasping Vines, and let you go.
Okay. Cool. Nepenthe seed already. Very nice. For your nerfed lands comboing pleasure. Wow, triple
Yeah.
phase shift. Awesome. Mm-hmm. 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 I may regret this.
Every time I say those words in a Keyforge game, and I do it anyway, I always regret it.
I may regret this. No in the archives. Going Brobnar. Taking your mother down to size. Really taking it down to size. And then we're going to get a fight. Yeah.
What do you have to regret with that?
I had options. I had other things I could have done.
Hmm.
No
Seems pretty good.
regrets. No regrets about what happened on the turn, but the turn that was not.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in that case, I feel like you might have a Reclaimed by Nature. I will. I think I'll make you show it.
Booby trap. Long fused mines. Nexus. Cool. Nexus, huh? That's mildly annoying. Do you have any more board control in Shadows? You have a Relentless Whispers, a Moon Cursor, which has poison, which should be venom, right? Because that always bugs me. It says
Hmm.
it's poisonous, but like I don't know. I guess your creature takes a little nibble when you come over to fight and keels over,
Yeah,
as opposed to
that's a good observation.
um, my Relentless Whisper. I think I'm gonna be a little greedy here. Play in the Penth Seed. Discard the Chota. Play a Blossom Drake
Hmm.
and a Blurnian Hydra.
Okay, so each text box of artifacts is considered blank.
It is super blank, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In that case,
Where is it?
I have some options.
Let's see if I can find this discard pile. It's hiding somewhere. There we are.
Let's regrow the mother. Let's cooperative hunting.
No? Ugh, ugly. So you're doing some damage. A damage. Then Lost in the Woods. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't hate that immediate threat to my Nepenthe Seed getting Nexused when you dealt with my Hydras
Yeah.
away, but okay.
Uh, I don't um I don't love this for my defense seed play, but I also don't want you to draw into your reclaimed and get no value. So I'm gonna bounce yours back.
Okay. Hmm. 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 Very interesting. Okay, cool. And for artifact control, you have the Grasping Vines, Mimicry. That's annoying. Mimicry's annoying. Mm-hmm.
This is a really interesting artifact control package.
Yeah, yeah.
Double Nexus as well, and the Customs Office to go along with the Grasping Vines. Um, yeah, it seems to work pretty well together.
I'm going for greed here once more. So we are going to Grasping Vines this one. We are going to play the Seed again. And dare you to mimicry. Dare you to mimicry my reclaimed instead of the eventual witching hour that you'll want to mimicry.
I don't think I would have any reason to mimicry that.
You say that now. Okay, Relentless Whispers. Does the deed. What do you have for key sheets in here? You do have mimicry for my ecto charge. That would be the real kick in the pants if you got to win via ecto charge. All right, we are going Geistoid. Doing the maths here. Yes, taking the archives. I'm going to boo myself. Okay, looking over what we got. Okay, I'm going to take it back.
Thought you
And
might.
boo this man some more. Cool. And I mean, it is. Although, is it even good? Is it even good? I put it in discard for you to. What are you doing? What are you doing, Amber Control wise? You got bait and switch. You got TMTP. I mean, I have to play it. We didn't come here and talk about Ecto Charge for me not to play it. But there we go.
Yeah, and you've got a Witching Hour coming.
I have an empty deck, and you can see my discard pile. Yeah.
I was frantically trying to look at it before you shuffle, but then I realized, okay, Witching Hour's not in there. He's not going to shuffle.
Nope.
2, 3, 4, 5,
And
6, 7, 8, 9. So you've got a Witching Hour. And a couple others.
yeah, I will.
Okay.
I will tell you the cards if you wanna save the Archon card
No, that's
scratching.
okay.
No.
You have a Feathered Shaman. You have a Witching Hour, and you have a Witch of the Spore.
I have those things.
Now I got to think about if there's a way for me to do something about that. And I don't think so. Unless I draw into something really good with Brain Eater here. And I did not.
Killing the Hydra is pretty cool too. Makes it's like very interesting to have non-witch things on your battle line when you're trying to do witch shenanigans. Lab work, okay. Phase shift and the Nexus. I am terrible at visualizing these turns, so bear with me
These are
here.
hard. I will say, Witch Queen is very hard to do it right.
Y'all didn't come here to sit here to watch me go in the tank for half an hour. So we're just gonna YOLO this. I'm gonna discard Witch of the Spore first. Seems legit. And I get to do 3 damage to one of your things. I am gonna replay Witch of the Spore at least one more time. I'm going to play Perilous Wilds twice. So the wilds can take out Bat Drone. Spore can take out Brain Eater.
Mm.
Nexus is going to bite it, I think, to Witch of the Spore. Yeah, that's cool.
Nexus would have bit it to Perilous Wild.
You're true. You're saying through things.
I think you probably can still kill Mother, but you definitely could have killed Mother.
Mm-hmm.
You could have cleared my board, I think.
I could have cleared your board, yeah. If I hit Mother there, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Could have. Bad player over
Yeah.
here.
I think the Hydra was actually really important for me to kill
Mm-hmm.
because the Perilous Wild could rule of 6 your Witch if I didn't.
The Perilous Wild is still going to rule of 6 my Witch.
Are you sure about that?
I have at least 3 other witches. Let's see. One, those 2. I am quite sure. We'll see. But
We'll
I'll
see.
have to reshuffle, which is going to be awkward. Will I? No, I can end with playing the Witching Hour and some. Yeah, I think it's going to be okay. So this one comes over here ready, is going to reap and get me the Perilous Wilds.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. She comes down and reaps and is going to ward Witch Queen. Perilous Wilds gets played to finish off the Bat Drone, bouncing Witch of the Eye. Cool. Witch of the Eye comes back, as does Witch of the Spore comes down, finishes off Brain Eater. I need the reap, and then the monies from Perilous Wild. Yes, reap gets back Perilous Wild. Reap, yes. 7 here, 1 to your mother, bounce the witch. Chota comes in ready. Yes, I would like to forge a key. Witch of the Eye comes down. Do I have any reason not to do those things? I don't think so. So we reap. And now the question is, yeah, see, if I'd wiped your board, you would have had a tough time. Lost in the Woods would still do it. But I could have made a case for like trying not to flip my deck here. And now I will. So I'll take back this Witching Hour, play it again. I guess I could still kill this mother. Is that better than the reaps? Probably. Right there. Right there. Damage here. My witches are skirmishy. Yeah. We'll take that out. Reap and ward. And pass.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still working on visualizing those turns well. I don't think there was another Chota key there, but I could have ended at the turn with 1 more Ember. All right, shuffling away my stuff. Nice. Interesting. Only 1 Chota key so far, Murph. So far. Yeah. Interesting. I can go to check. Untamed, clearly. You come back with your bait and switch. Is that your only out though? To stay alive? Maybe? Hmm. Dang. 1, 2, 3. I can bounce that one. Considering a Brobnar turn here too. I think I like the Brobnar turn actually. Yeah, let's go for it. Um, all right, so play a Mournful Barnburner. That gets ready and enraged. Play a Fiery Jark over here. It's going to smash my Chota and send it back to hand.
Nice.
Reap with the burner and discard this burn the stockpile. Yeah.
I like that a lot. Very cool. Well, knowing that Chota's there, I don't think I'm gonna have anything for it, but I can play some cards. And just like every game I play against you on these evenings, I'm like a turn behind you, where I just drew into my library access, just drew into my other key control. Um, you should have, I think, on a check. I see why you did what you did.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would have just gone to check because I didn't have anything to stop you.
May have just been better. Um, yeah.
I didn't have my mimicry either. I just drew the mimicry right as you flipped. I'm
Yeah,
like
dodging the mimicry was huge. I
I'm
was
always I'm always like a turn behind in these games where it's like if I could draw the card a turn earlier, but I didn't even get to see the library access till now. Um, and you didn't boo me, did you?
I did not boo you. No, I
Okay,
booed
yeah,
myself to charge up the witching hour. Yeah.
yeah. And I didn't have a way to make you draw, or I didn't have the mimicry then when your discard pile was empty.
Mm-hmm.
Would have been nice. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't think I could have reaped with Jark there too. If I put Jark on the same side as Barnburner, the Witch Queen wouldn't be centered, and then the Chota wouldn't bounce.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Um, it's a little funky. Needed the Witch Queen to still be centered when I killed Chota there. Yeah, I don't know. I maybe going to check there was better.
I think you did a good job ensuring that you would win the turn after. I don't know if there was anything I could have done to stop you. Like the Feathered Shaman in this set is way better, I think, than it was in Worlds Collide.
Feathered Shaman is not bad here. I've yet to unlock some double Chota, consistent double Chota turns without seed on board or some other amber to start with. But passing the turn with leaving like I don't know, witching hour in hand and like two warded witches is pretty solid still.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If I had seen the Fiery Jark line, I would have probably lost in the woods on Chota, but I didn't want you to eventually draw back into Chota.
yeah, yeah. That was tricky. I mean that pushes me into the like just go to check route too, um,
Yeah, true.
which
Well,
is
I would have you wouldn't have been able to go to, oh, you would have, yeah. I would have shuffled in two, but yeah, you're right.
still three untamed eaters.
Yep, and I had nothing then. Didn't have the Murmuk either at the time.
All right. Snuck through by the hint of the hair of my chinny chin chin. Is that the saying? Yeah. But yeah, a couple of things that went my way there. Though I was definitely worried that I was going to get caught with my pants down when I put my whole deck in discard with the mimicry, and
Yeah.
I got value from the pen seed when I wasn't sure that I would either. Um,
Yeah, I had a great opener actually. I had a mother and two phase shifts, and so going first, just play the mother, and I just never drew into any
mhm.
more logos after that, really.
I like I like to save the packs in with cooperative hunting too. Kind of fun. Uh,
It's not bad, except this deck never has creatures. So like I either do one or zero with cooperative hunting.
do you ever face shift it in on a library access turn? I feel like that's a unload all my logo studers, wipe your board. Feels pretty
There's
good.
generally better options for my phase shifts than cooperative hunting followed by save the pack.
Yeah, save the pack for sure. Not um, interesting though. It's cool. It's cool. It's succumbed to the curse, but still a cool deck. Yeah,
Yeah, it did succumb, but that's all right.
it's all right. All
Got to lose
right.
eventually.
So this would have been a lands combo deck too. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. With a Novu and some other recursion, triple phase shift is still awesome with library access.
yeah. And the reverse time does some weird things in here as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Especially
I
if you
like it.
can, yeah, reverse time with your Lost in the Woods on the library access turn is really interesting.
Yeah, I did have a game before with that where I just kept shuffling back my Logos creatures back into my deck after I reverse timed and had like an empty deck. Um, just gets you some more easy plays and good value out of the Lost in the Woods.
Yep, right on. Cool, cool. Well, good game, fun times,
Good game.
and thanks to the folks in the chat for hanging out. I think this will sign off here. Um, yeah, right on.
Yeah, man. Good game.
Good
Thanks for
game.
listening, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Catch you on the lab. Bye.